Music and Appreciation, the Middle Ages and Renaissance Periods, Learning Module 3. The terms of use are given below. The timeline. Middle Ages or medieval, from 450 to 1450. Rome was sacked by the Vandals around 455. Beowulf was circa 700. First Crusade was 1066. The Black Death was 1347 to 52. Joan of Arc was executed by the English in 1431. Renaissance, 1450 through 1600. The Gutenberg Bible, 1456. Columbus reaches America in 1492. Leonardo da Vinci painted Mona Lisa in 1503. Michelangelo made the sculpture of David in 1504. Raphael painted the School of Athens in 1505. Martin Luther's 95 Theses was 1517, and Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, 1596. The Middle Ages, Part 2, a period of wars and mass migration, strong class distinctions. The nobility were the castles, the knights in armor, feasting. Peasantry lived in huts or serfs, part of the land. The clergy ruled everyone. Only the monks were literate. The architecture, early period, Romanesque, churches and monasteries from 1100 to 1150 had curved arches. The late period, the Gothic, had pointed styles. Late Middle Ages saw technological progress. The Middle Ages, the architecture, the early period, Romanesque, characterized by semicircular arches. Two pictures are shown here with those semicircular arches. Architecture continued. Gothic, pointed arch, ribbed vault, and flying buttress. Here are pictures showing those three characteristics of the Gothic architecture. Flying buttress, remember, is a support system for the walls. Here are three pictures of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France, and York in the United Kingdom. One of the most distinctive characteristics of the Gothic architecture is the expansive area of windows, which produced much light. In 1190, here is a picture shown. Then we have two more pictures shown of cathedrals in Reims, France, and Milan, Italy. The interior of a Gothic cathedral is shown below. Music in the Middle Ages. The church dominates musical activity. The most important musicians were priests. Women did not sing in mixed church settings. Music was primarily vocal and sacred. Instruments were not used in church. The Gregorian chant was the official music of the Roman Catholic Church, no longer common since the Second Vatican Council. Monophonic melody set to Latin text, another characteristic of the Gregorian chant, with flexible rhythm without meter and beat. Named for Pope Gregory I from 590 to 604, originally no music notation system, notation developed over several centuries. The church modes, different half and whole steps other than the modern scales. Music in the Middle Ages continued. The organ. The organ was the most prominent instrument around 1100, very primitive instrument. Keys were operated by heavy blows with the fists. Sound could be heard from miles around. It gradually became flexible and could play more intricate music. The clergy complained about noisy instruments that distracted worshipers. Some said the organ sounded like a crack of thunder rather than producing a worshipful sound. It continued to be a source of conflict between composers and church authorities who wanted music only as a discrete accompaniment to the religious service. Medieval organs. The picture below on the left is one of a more primitive organ. The picture on the right is more elaborate, as you can see, with pipes. The development of polyphony, the organum. Between 700 and 900, a second line was added to the chant. Additional part initially improvised and was not written, parallel to chant line at a different pitch. Contrary motion then separated the melodic curve, two lines with individual rhythmic and melodic content. The new part in the top voice moved faster than the chant line. The Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris, France. There is a picture of the Notre Dame Cathedral as we formerly knew it. The School of Notre Dame measured rhythm. Parisian composers developed a rhythmic notation. A chant notation had only indicated pitch and not rhythm. Notre Dame's choir masters, Léonin and Perrotin, were the leaders. Medieval thought that the interval of the third was dissonant. Modern chords built of thirds considered consonant. 14th century music, new art in France. Borrowed secular melodies to put in sacred music. Composers wrote music that was not based on the chant. New music notation had developed and allowed for better rhythmic notation. Syncopation was now possible, became common. The new type of music was called ars nova. William de Machaut, mid to late 14th century composer, 1300 to 1377, also famous as a poet. Though a priest, he spent most of his life working at court. He wrote both sacred and secular music, and best known for his Notre Dame Mass. Part 3, the Renaissance, 1450 to 1600. The rebirth of human learning and creativity. Time of great explorers. The humanists were not interested in life in heaven or hell. They were captivated by cultures of ancient Greece and Rome. This was a weakening also of the Catholic Church. Importance of education and literacy. Education and literacy were now status symbols, result of invention of the printing press. The invention of the printing widened the circulation of music. Result, the number of composers and performers increased. Every person was expected to be educated in music. The use of music was expanding. For example, Shakespeare's stage directors call for music over 300 times, and plays are full of beautiful tributes to the music. Characteristics of Renaissance music. Vocal music was more important than instrumental music. A very close relationship between the text, the words, and the music. Word painting or text painting, musical representation of specific images. For example, the words descending from heaven might be set to a descending line. Primarily vocal with no accompaniment. The texture was polyphonic. The rhythm and melody. Rhythm flows and overlaps. Composers were less concerned with metrical figures. Smooth, stepwise melodies were predominant. Melodies overlap rhythmically between the voices. The Renaissance choral music did not need instrumental accompaniment. Because of this, the period is sometimes referred to the golden age of unaccompanied choral music. A cappella means no instruments, unaccompanied. If instruments were used, they might duplicate the vocal lines to reinforce the sounds. Parts for specific instruments were rarely found. Part 3, the Renaissance. Sacred music in the Renaissance. Two main forms, the motet, a short polyphonic choral work, Latin text usually overlaid with vernacular text, often borrows the lowest vocal part from a chant. The Mass, the second main form, the Catholic worship service. Long works that included 5 main parts of the service, or prayers of the Renaissance Mass. Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei. Josquin d'Esprit lived from 1440 to 1521, a contemporary of Columbus and Da Vinci, a leading composer of his time and famous. To the right is a picture of Josquin d'Esprit, and below is a picture of his manuscript in his handwriting. Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, an Italian Renaissance composer devoted to the Catholic Church, wrote 104 masses and approximately 450 other sacred works. Here are 2 examples of his vocal works. Part 3, the Renaissance, secular music in the Renaissance. The madrigal originated around 1520. Intended for amateur performers, after-dinner music, it used extensive text painting or word painting, printed in part or opposing sheet music format. Originated in Italy. Famous madrigalists, Thomas Morley was English, Carlos Gesualdo, Italian, Thomas Wilkes was English. Instruments in the Renaissance period. Instruments used during the Renaissance period were the harpsichord and organ, or the lute, a versatile plucked string instrument with the body shaped like a half pear. Below is a picture of two musicians playing the lute. The lute, a pear-shaped instrument, played something like the guitar during the Renaissance period. Here is a picture of the lute. Please enjoy the listening of the familiar tune Greensleeves from the optional listening list on the lesson page. Instrumental music of the Renaissance, still subordinate to vocal music. Increasingly, instruments accompanied voices, sometimes played adapted vocal music alone. Published music stated that various parts of the music could be sung or played. Purely instrumental music existed almost exclusively for dancing. Dancing became ever more popular during the Renaissance. The distinction between loud outdoor instruments and softer indoor ones. Composers did not specify the instrumentation. Passamezzo and Galliard by Pierre Francis Caroubel. From Terpsichore, 1612, a collection of dance tunes arranged by Michael Praetorius. The Renaissance dance music. Dances frequently played in pairs. Passamezzo was in duple meter. The form could be A1, B1, or C1. Galliard in triple meter. The form could be A1B, B1C, C1, A1, B1, or C1. The instrumentation was not specified in the written music. This is the end of Learning Module 3 lesson. Please continue with the Learning Module 3 quiz, followed with the Learning Module 3 written assignment.